on paper, they have no business being in these series, but whether it's Caleb Martin last series or Duncan Robinson in spurts or Kyle Lowry giving them a big moment here or Bam Adebayo, or it's just somebody just keeps stepping up, right? So I think the Heat have a chance to push this to 6. I don't think it's going to go to 7. I don't think the Heat are going to win, but that's sort of where I'm at on this one, right? Um, Speaking of Nikola Jokic and his monster game, just take a look at the box score here. Michael Porter Jr. 5 points. You hate to just look at that, but there's just so many makeable threes. I don't think he really had an imprint on this game. And Contavious Caldwell Pope, just really so many mistakes, so many missed shots. He only took 4 shots tonight. It was definitely the 5th option on the court for sure, but back to back, fouling 3-point shooters, you need to be a little bit more disciplined than that. I really like what I've seen from Christian Braun. I can't stop raving about what this guy's doing, but I think they just need more. I mean, you got 42 minutes from Jokic tonight. You got 41 points, 4 assists. It's staggering to see that, right? Like, it's just his guys not hitting shots. And to be honest, they didn't really hit shots in the first game either, but they got away with it because they shot 50% from the field. But I just felt like we have not seen the best of the Denver Nuggets yet. And I wonder if we will see it in game 3 onward. If this was a wake-up call that this team needed, I don't know. For the Miami Heat, I really liked the insertion of Kevin Love in the starting lineup. I think that more size, he was competent on defense. Not something you usually expect. Defensive liability. I agree with the analysts that he just, he's really great. He's a really smart player. He spaces the floor, and he just holds his own. Right? I think Bam Adebayo he had a great game tonight. He really did. Gabe Vincent oh man, how many teams could have had this guy? And he has just been such a consistent performer for them. And as the aforementioned Duncan Robinson and Kyle Lowry off the bench, and I think Cody Zeller gave them some really competent minutes, but he was really on the court when Nikola Jokic did his major damage. So I don't know how they're supposed to survive in the minutes that Bam Adebayo was on the bench, because in both stints that Bam went to the bench, the Denver Nuggets just absolutely, decimated the Heat. So I don't know. You're going to have to play him 48 minutes a night at home. I have no idea, but that's sort of where I stand on that. As I said, I don't expect this series. I'm not expecting this series to be a particularly close one in terms of like it's going to go down all the way to 7, but I think the Heat have a chance. Like, they have a chance if Tyler Hero comes back and he is anything close to in-game rhythm, which is really hard to expect given that, it's 7 weeks without competitive basketball. It's going to be tough, right? Rob Ho saying, on paper, Denver is better, but I can see Heat winning it all. Just exactly what you said. They find a way. Yeah. I mean, look, defense, right? Defense, shot making, experience, maturity. There's a lot of things that are really on their side. Jamal Murray has to put his imprint on this game. He has to win his matchup. And I think Nikola Jokic is obviously going to be the best player in this series. I think regardless win, lose, or draw, it's hard to imagine a player who's even approaching his level. But like, Jamal Murray has to be like by far the 3rd best player in this series. Because the Heat just have all these role players that make sense, right? And they have all these schemes, and they have this incredible coach. And I think Eric Spoelstra has just sort of flown under the radar because I don't think he gets enough credit for all the championships that they won with LeBron, because it's just, well, he had LeBron, and that just sort of happens, right? When you have LeBron, whether you're Mike James, yeah, like when you have LeBron, you just don't get credit. I think that's just it, right? When you're a coach, like Ty Lue, did he get full credit? Yeah, I mean, he got credit, but it's not quite the same. right? So I think that Eric Spoelstra is finally being appreciated for the coach that he is. And I think that that's important. The lines are open. Some Raptor news. It does look like the Raptors' next coach is going to be European. I'm sorry if I'm a little bit discombobulated here. I'm just like trying to. There's been a lot happening over the last like 25 minutes. There's been like a fire alarm blaring off, new laptop and all that stuff. But let me try to recalibrate here. So I've been thinking a lot about the Toronto Raptors and their predicament. And the predicament, of course, is they're not moving fast enough. Everything's going so slow. Raptors are not, they're not being decisive. What are they waiting for? Why are they interviewing guys? Why are they not making a decision? Why are they not rebuilding, et cetera, right? And this comment right here, right? What the F are they even doing, man? Joke team now. I've been thinking a lot about how the new CBA has come, and it's been a little bit out of left field for me, right? As someone who was pretty aware of the items being discussed, I think the Players Association has screwed this up. For the second straight time, I think the Players Association has screwed it up. The first time they screwed it up because they didn't do the cap easing thing, and then suddenly like Alan Crabb and you know, who was it? The Kevin Durant thing happens, right? And I think once again they've sort of screwed it up because this second apron is really, really beneficial to the owners. That's it, right? That's what it is. Said when I heard they interviewed JJ Redick, I thought it was a joke. Well, I mean, interviewing people is not really a problem for me. What is a problem, however, is giving the guy the job if he's not the right person for the job. But whether it be the coaching search, the 13th pick, making trades, bringing guys back, figuring out what direction this roster needs to go in, I think there's a lot riding on batting 100 this offseason for the Toronto Raptors. And reports have been that there's sort of infighting between the Raptors front office about which direction to go. They could go left, they could go right, they could go full rebuild, they could try to bring it back, right? Now, obviously, if you're a fan of this channel, you're probably not in the bring it back camp, but you got to appreciate the CBA, man. You got to appreciate the type of cap hell that certain teams are about to fall into. And you have to appreciate being one of the teams that is not in that cap hell. Now, right now, everything that's happened with the new CBA has put into context, for me at least, why Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam played the way they did this year. Because when you look at that second tax apron and you consider the ramifications for teams now going over the second tax apron, it's no longer, oh, it's a hefty fine, it's $1 for $1 tax, we can't afford it, blah blah blah, right? The Raptors have not been a tax team in any year other than the cap year, the championship year. But this time around, there's an actual roster element to it. It's not just a financial cutoff. You don't have your mid-level exception. You can't get buyout candidates. You can't take back more money in a trade, right? So you can really say that an owner could go to a player and just say, look, we can't afford to pay you this money because we'll be hamstrung as an organization. And this sort of puts the onus back on the players. And so if you're an organization, you can't afford. So there's like two models that are going to work in the NBA right now. You're going to either have two stars and scraps. And by scraps, you consider like what supermax guys and stars are really going to be making in the next CBA. It's probably going to be around 50 to 55, $60 million, right? Guys like Dame Lillard are already in that, approaching that. And, guys like Luka, guys like Nikola Jokic, guys like this, guys who are eligible for those supermax dollars, they're going to be comfortably in the 60 plus, right? So you can't have 3 of those guys, otherwise you won't have a roster. So you can only have 2 of those guys. The next level down, so it'll be 2 guys, and then you'll have about 50 to 60 million to fill out the entire rest of your roster. Which means that having a 30 million guy, a guy who makes $30 million, but is worth like not $30 million. A good example of a guy who makes $30 million and is not worth $30 million in the current NBA is like someone like Tobias Harris, but also someone like a Fred VanVleet if he gets the contract that he wants. Someone like a Duncan Robinson who doesn't make 30 million, but he makes like 20, 22 million, and he's not worth 22 million. And the ramifications of having those guys when you have this sort of 2-star model, and a lot of teams have a 2-star model. You consider the Miami Heat. They have Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. Both those guys are on max contracts, right? If they stick around and their next contract looks really big, well, suddenly, $30+ million for Kyle Lowry, $20+ million for Duncan Robinson. Yeah, that's your team. That's 4 guys. That's your team. And 2 of those guys don't start for you. So the type of roster building here is going to have to be drastically adjusted here, because what's going to happen is now the stars are going to get paid. The stars are always going to be paid, and they're always going to be underpaid in my experience. But the next level down, which is like your third guy, which, in previous regimes and previous eras, that guy could get max money too, even though he wasn't worth it. Like a guy like Chris Bosh, you could argue he wasn't quite worth D Wade. He wasn't worth D Wade and LeBron money, but he got D Wade LeBron money, right? You can't have that third guy anymore. So now the rest of it is going to just be built out. So you take a team like the Boston Celtics. Well, can you afford Grant Williams? No, you can't, because someone can pay that guy 20 million and you're not one of those teams. The second model, away from the 2-star plus scraps model, is going to be the 1 superstar and assets model. Like 1 superstar with like 5-ish starting level players. So that 1 superstar might run you 55 to 60 million. And then your starters might be like 20-ish, 25. So you get your 2025 times 5. You get your 1 superstar, and then you're done. That's it. And that model will be interesting. I think a team like the OKC Thunder, they're going to be hamstrung because, someone's going to want to. It's basically going to be like 60 guys who can really have max contracts, maybe 50 guys. And then everyone else is going to be something below that. Now, the only way you can really, really royally screw this up is pay a non-star star money. Now you absolutely are screwed. So someone like a Bradley Beal, right? You want to max out a Bradley Beal. If on the next extension, for instance, if the Houston Rockets or the Detroit Pistons want to max out a Cade Cunningham or a Jalen Green, in my opinion, you're screwed. If you do this, you are absolutely screwed, because they're not worth it. Hold on, I'm gonna try to fix my lighting here. It's been a little bit stupid. Just all right. So the Raptors have a lot invested in figuring out whether or not, if they haven't already figured it out, cheat sheet he's not, that Pascal Siakam, like this entire thing with Pascal Siakam. Now he's not eligible for a supermax, but he is eligible for a max contract. And in the next CBA, Pascal Siakam declining on a max contract could be, that's your team. Because if Scotty ends up with a supermax or a max, his rookie max extension plus Pascal plus OG, that's your team. You don't have, that's just it. Those 3 guys plus scraps. And that's not winning in the NBA. And so now, you have these albatross contracts on your hands, and maybe Pascal at that age is on a steep decline, and OG is, injury prone. And so you could end up in this shitty situation where Scotty Barnes is basically like, if he becomes what you think he's going to become, he doesn't have enough help and he doesn't have pieces around him that fit. He demands a trade because he can't win here. the new CBA really does hamstring a team this way. This will be doubly true if you also have guys like Jakob Poeltl for like 17 or 18 million dollars and Fred VanVleet on like 30 million dollars. So the Raptors will have to think very, very long and hard about the market for these guys if they want to hit reboot on this in a month or 2 months, sorry, in a half year or a year after this, because there might not be a market to trade these guys away. That's the point. And that's the big point that you need to take away from this, right? Now, the flip side of this is a lot of people are against letting these guys walk, letting Gary walk, letting Fred walk. People don't want to let these guys walk. And I hear you and I get it. But please understand the other side of this. There are teams out there that are severely, and I do mean severely, capped out. There are other teams that are super close to being capped out. And they're not going to be able to operate as normal after next year under this new situation. Teams like the Denver Nuggets that have 3 max guys, are they going to be able to extend Christian Braun? If you like him, right? So they might be looking at someone like that and maybe like, hey, this guy's going to be up for a $20 million extension in a few years. We're going to have to trade him. You look at teams like the OKC Thunder, right? Let's say, for instance, all of their top picks actually do hit. So Chet becomes a max player, Jalen Williams becomes a max player, Josh Giddey becomes a max player, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is already a max player, and his next contract can be a super max. They can't afford those guys. One of those guys has to go. Would you want to be the team that can facilitate that? There will be such a benefit to being a team that is actually operating under the cap, not under the cap, but under the luxury line, that has a little bit of room to facilitate these trades. Because as clearly noted, a team like the Golden State Warriors cannot take back more salary in a trade, right? So they will have to give up salary in order to incentivize another team. They can't use their mid-level exception. They can't do this. They can't do that. So you look at a guy like Jordan Poole, and I'm not saying he's worth the albatross contract that they've gotten on him, but let's say, for instance, you're Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster, and you're like, okay, let's say we don't bring back Fred and we don't bring back, let's say we don't bring back Fred and we don't bring back Gary. We just let them walk for nothing, right? Let's say in an absolute crazy world, you also let Jakob Poeltl walk for nothing. Okay. Now that's 3 assets, 3 starters that just went out the door. Sorry, guys. This is absolutely madness. Hang on. That's 3 assets that just went out the door for absolutely nothing. Can you possibly now, by getting this far under the cap, facilitate a trade for Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, and Jordan Poole for sign and trade something, right? Like, could you sign and trade Fred VanVleet for Jordan Poole and Jonathan Kuminga? That's a huge cap saving for them, right? It doesn't necessarily make them that much worse. I'm just saying something like that is not possible if you bring back all these guys. So the last thing you want to be doing in a situation where everyone's pockets are about to get tightened is pay guys more than what they're worth. And I think the most important thing to realize here is if you lock yourself into a contract like this, don't use past precedents like, oh, Russell Westbrook's contract, well, that got moved. Well, that was the last CBA. And, John Wall's contract's been moved. So Fred VanVleet's movable, at 30 million. There may not be a single team in this league that will take this guy at 32 million if he starts declining, which means you eat that contract and you have that dude in your locker room. And if you want to bench him, you're going to have all sorts of chemistry issues. I am thinking very long and hard about the concept of bringing back a guy like Fred VanVleet, especially if he is, and his decision is what is holding this team up, because I don't sense any appreciation from that dude for the opportunity that this team has given him at every step of the way. I've never sensed it. I really haven't. Everything seems to be like, oh, he would have done this anywhere. And, he's always going to go to the highest bidder and blah, blah, blah. And the Raptors have to overpay. I'm just ready to move on. And look, I understand that the Raptors don't have their draft pick next year, and this has been a topic that has been discussed ad nauseum, and a lot of people just don't want to be bad next year because you don't want to give up this pick to the Spurs. But I'm telling you, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter at this point. You give them a 7th pick, give them an 8th pick, give them a 9th pick. I don't care. I would rather that than pay Pascal and OG and and Fred more money than what they're worth, and Gary or whatever, just to it's ego. That's all it is. That would be ego. That would be like, oh, we made a bad trade. Look, when you make a mistake, you admit you make a mistake and you move on. In my experience, that is the best way to get over a mistake. The worst thing you can do when you make a mistake is double down and try to make the mistake better. That's called chasing a knife. In investing, it's called like chasing a falling knife, right? And you just don't want to be doing that. So I don't care. At the end of the day, you're going to lose your pick next year. And if you don't lose your pick next year, you're screwed, because now you're going to lose your pick in a loaded draft. And high schoolers are going to be able to come into the NBA. I don't really care about the second round picks either, by the way, guys. That's another thing. One of the things I was noticing, when I saw all the guys going back to school, was that a lot of the guys going back to school are the types of guys who would have been available at 45, 47, 48. They're going back to school because they got NIL deals and they know that next year's draft is going to be shit. So what did you really do? Okay, well, now you have a guy who would have gone 46th in this draft that's going to go 29th in next year's draft. Congratulations. That's what you're missing out on? I don't care about that. What I desperately care about is the draft where high schoolers can come back. You get a 22nd pick in that draft. It's worth probably more than the 10th pick next year. So I'm totally cool with that. The Raptors traded out of a really bad draft, probably for a player in Jakob Poeltl who wasn't really worth it, frankly. You probably get him. There's comparable players to be gotten at this point. But I'm not, in order to correct that one thing and make that one thing from a PR perspective, to make that one stupid mistake go away, I'm not willing to then sacrifice maybe 4 years or 5 years of a bad contract. That's just where I'm at. So I think that whatever the Raptors are doing right now, yes, it's excruciating and painful. And a lot of us just wish that we had answers about who's coming back, who's coaching this team, etc. But you have to understand that who is coaching this team is it has to be implicitly linked to who is ultimately coming back. And we don't know who's coming back. So does that mean that the Raptors will be without a coach going into the draft? I doubt it. But it also means that maybe this is a tough sell. Maybe it's a weird thing, because what do you tell a Jordi Fernandez? Honestly, it's not even just that. Okay, well, what do you tell Jordi Fernandez? It's, does your thinking about who you want coaching this team change based on the roster that you have? Different coaches do different things. Some coaches are great at development. Some coaches are great at X's and O's. Some coaches are great at connecting with young players. Some coaches are great at coaching veteran rosters. Some coaches desperately do not want to be in a rebuilding situation. And you can't really tell them right now with a straight face, we're not rebuilding next year. You can't say that, because if Fred VanVleet walks, you are rebuilding. To some extent, you are, right? If he walks for nothing, if he, goes to the highest bidder, does not agree to facilitate a sign and trade, you just lose him outright. That is a lot of wins walking out the door. Now, you can argue the basketball product on the court will be much more enjoyable to watch. I'll agree with you. It will be. But there's no way that you become better just by losing Fred VanVleet. You have to get something back for him. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, where it's a tough sell, in the sense that it's complicated. Like people want to be sure about what they're signing up for, and you can't really tell them for sure what they're signing up for at this point. Now, the grander point of who is actually still in the running, reports are that it's Jordi, Sergio, and there's some talk about David Adelman, and some talk about Šarina Jasikevičić. I butcher that name sometimes, even though I was a very big fan of his growing up, and watched him play a lot. But It's a tough name. It's a tough. I'm not Lithuanian, so it's a bit of a tough name. Um, I like all of them. Every single candidate that is currently being rumored, with the exception of Steve Nash, who betting odds still very much favor. I am cool with pretty much any of those coaching hires. And that speaks volumes, in my opinion, to the research that has gone into this. Okay. What about Jamal? Who's Jamal? Jamal McGlure as a head coach? Nah. Doc Rivers? Nope. I'm not cool with that. I would not be cool with Doc Rivers. I mean, no arguments here. Thaddeus Young, absolutely not, and probably not gonna be back. Okay. Probably means Jama. From what I've heard, I don't think Jama's really in the running. I think at some point he's probably the lead guy to replace Steve Kerr in Golden State. If that does not happen this offseason, it may happen next offseason. Whenever Steve Kerr decides, I think he will probably be able to move up to the head office. He's already got some head office experience, kind of like what we saw with Brad Stevens. I think Jama is probably his preferred replacement. So I'm pretty sure that the Raptors are going to lose Jama to the Warriors in that sense. In the sense that they've already lost him to the Warriors. But I mean, like, in terms of this guy is probably going to become, I think, one of the better coaches in the NBA at some point in our lifetimes. All right, let's get to this. Let's get to this mock draft. And again, the lines are open if you want to call. It is Jama. Rue's saying it has to be Jordy. I'm with you, man. I would prefer Jordy Fernandez over anyone. All right, let's get to this mock draft. We've never done one of these before on this show, so that's kind of cool. All right. Hang on. So I don't know who you guys watch for draft coverage. I watch a lot of people, obviously, Rafael Barlow and Hoop Intellect and Adam Spins. Like, there's a lot of people doing good stuff. ESPN draft coverage is a huge thing, and Coach Spins put Cason Wallace 15th in his last mock draft, and I thought that was crazy. There are a lot of people rising up these draft boards that I do not have any interest in, including Leonard Miller, Jarris Walker, Cam Whitmore. Like, these are just not prospects that, like, dazzle me. It's not anything personal or whatever. I'm not saying they're bad players, but even like a guy like Grady Dick, just always consistently being mocked top 12. Like, I have my preferences for sure. And almost every single mock draft I'm looking at, someone that I love is available at 13. Whether they go 13 in that mock draft is completely another story, but they're almost always available. So let's just try to see how this would break it down if the draft were to happen. Okay. So with the first pick in the NBA draft, big surprise, the San Antonio Spurs select Victor Wembanyama. Clearly, as generational as they come, arguably the greatest prospect in sports history. I think it's a big thing to say someone's the greatest prospect and someone's going to be the greatest player. I don't think he's going to be the greatest player, but I definitely do think, as is currently constructed, what he does on the basketball court and how it fits with what is going on with the modern NBA today, I think Victor Wembanyama would go first in just about every single draft in the last 35 years. Yes, that means I think there is a very strong chance that he can go first overall, even over LeBron James. I think the only argument there would be maybe durability, maybe marketability. But in the current context of the NBA is global, NBA is trying to go more global. I think Victor Wembanyama checks a lot of boxes there too. He's got the right personality for it, really. I mean, in all honesty, he's got the right personality to expand the horizons of the league. Now, with the second pick in the NBA draft, I fully expect the Charlotte Hornets to screw this up, but I'm not going to let them on my watch. So I'm going to take Scoot Henderson, and they're just going to have to deal with it. All right. Now, am I'm like 30%, 40% sure they're going to somehow go with Brandon Miller on this one because they think that it's impossible for Scoot and LaMelo to play together. But I think that Scoot and LaMelo is a dynamic backcourt. And, it kind of sucks for the Raptors that they're both going to be, playing together in the East. But at least Wemby's not in the East. So, take one, lose one. This will work very, very well for the Raptors if somehow they take Brandon Miller here. But yeah, anyways, I think he stepped back a little bit this year. I really like what I saw from him last year, but his feel for the game is unmatched. His creativity, his basketball IQ, his athleticism, explosiveness, getting, 3-level scorer potential is just crazy. I think he has a lot of tools. As far as 1-2 type of, like you go back in NBA history and look at guys who went number 1, number 2 in the NBA draft, this is about as good as it gets with those two. All right. With the third pick in the NBA draft, the Portland Trailblazers select Brandon Miller. The obvious third pick here, consensus, third pick. I think he was, I think for most people would say the best player in college basketball. This past year, I think he has a lot of skills. If the off the court stuff doesn't bother you, it's really like this is what people are going for today, which is positional size, versatility. I think his defense needs to get better. I think his paint finishing needs to get better. He needs to get stronger. He was a little bit older as a freshman. I don't necessarily think he's going to be a superstar in the NBA, but I do think he'll probably level out to an all-star at some point. But it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And my fourth pick, this one going to the Houston Rockets. I think this is a dream fit, about as good a fit as I can find in the draft, which is Emin Thompson to the Houston Rockets. I love this pick for the Rockets for so many reasons. I think Emin Thompson and Jalen Green just fit. I think they're just a really good backcourt duo. I think they're both explosive enough to get past their defender. I think Emin Thompson has just a greater feel, playmaking, positional versatility, size. If he can become like a really good defender at the NBA level, I think that would be just incredible. But I think he has an outside shot to be a superstar. Like there isn't a lot, way too smoky saying Emin's shooting form is nasty. Yeah, I agree. Ausar Thompson has definitely flashed a lot more in terms of shooting potential so far. But I think it's just when I look at guys who have bad shooting, right? If you're a bad shooter and you're an off-ball player, that to me is double whammy. But if you have like kind of shaky mechanics or, at least if you're not a great shooter, but you're a great playmaker, I think we can live with you, right? Like Josh Giddey's not a great shooter. Scotty Barnes not a great shooter, right? There's a lot of guys, and Jimmy Butler's not a great shooter. But you can take it and say, well, these guys are great initiators. Like they can initiate your offense, they can play with the ball in their hands, they can make great decisions. And if they project out to be your number one playmaking option, then the shooting doesn't matter as much. Russell Westbrook won MVPs. He won an MVP without being a great shooter, right? So obviously, ideally, you want everyone on your team that can shoot really well. But if you're going to have a guy who's a non-shooter, I prefer it be a guy who kind of plays with the basketball than without. Now, with the fifth pick, what do I expect the Detroit Pistons to do? Now, if I were them right here, Anthony Black is my pick. And that's probably not the way they're going to go, but that's definitely the way they should go. Where do I think they're going to go? I think they're going to go Cam Whitmore. super athlete, not a fan of his overall game, touch, feel, whatever. But if you can, I don't know, if you can click all the mental pieces together, the physical tools are there. The upside is definitely on the higher end of star, superstar. I think a lot of people who would see that guy work out in an open gym would walk away saying, I have seen this turn into a superstar almost every single time. And so I think, you can make a solid case for that. Um, Now here, this is where I get a little bit stuck, which is because the Orlando Magic do have 2 picks here, and I'm not quite sure which they're gonna use on which type of player, right? Um, there's a part of me that thinks they go completely off the board here, but I think they go Asar Thompson. What do you guys think? Azar Thompson or Jarris Walker feel like the right pick here. But Jarris Walker and, to me, Paolo Banchero, this is going to be like an interesting fit. Um, is this too early for Grady Dick? Or is this exactly where someone like a Case and Wallace should go, in theory, right? Because you can make a case for Case in here. I think this is the Case and Wallace range, right? I think this is where you probably start looking at someone like Casey Wallace. The Magic have always prioritized players with length, right? Um, Length, playmaking, positional size, versatility. I think Anthony Black kind of fits, but then you just drafted Paolo. You have Jalen Suggs. How many different, guys who need the ball are you going to draft? So I wonder if they don't trade both picks to move up potentially. Um, I think this was probably Cam Whitmore territory. Like I think this probably would have been a good place for Cam Whitmore. I think that would have been good. I think it's a little too early for Grady Dick, but I wonder if they go Grady Dick here. It really depends on how they feel about him. He is going to get hunted on defense a little bit, but I think that this is a place where, do they go fit? Like they have so many young players. They have Franz Wagner. Like you want to add 2 guys who need development time, or do you like the flashes that you saw with Franz and Paulo? And are you now starting to look at these picks as, okay, maybe we need to start thinking about like, guys that just fit with what we're trying to do here. Um, I'm gonna go with Azur Thompson here. Um, but I'm not happy about it. The fit is a little bit wonky to me. Ideally, you'd prefer someone who can shoot a little bit better, but I don't see a real reason not to take him here. If I were them, I would seriously consider Cason Wallace and Jalen Hood Schifino here. But again, it's kind of like the consensus thing of like, well, can you pick a guy at 6 who, maybe shouldn't be picked at 9? I don't know. I don't think fit should ever be in consideration. But yeah, 7, honestly, this is seamless fit. 7, Jarris Walker. I think this is the right place for him. I think he would play really well off of what they're doing with Tyrese Halliburton and Andrew Nembhard in the backcourt. I think he's got some positional versatility to him. I think he'll be a really good player. Upside, probably a very high end role player with, a couple of all-star teams as the absolute max upside, but I like him. I like him a lot. Okay. Now, with the 8th pick in the NBA draft, the team that has no clue what they're doing ever, will they finally make the right pick? Now, the right pick, obviously, right now is between Cason Wallace and Anthony Black, right? Like that to me is very obvious. But consider the roster that they have. They have Bradley Beal, Kyle Kuzma. Is Kyle Kuzma coming back? I think that's a question worth asking. Daniel Gafford, Kristaps Porzingis. Like, if they're bringing Kyle Kuzma back, Johnny Davis didn't really work out for them last year. Point guard is definitely a position of need. Um, I would find it very hard to pass up on Anthony Black here. I also, as a fan of Anthony Black, would hate for him to go to the Wizards, but I think this is just too far. So I'm going to go Anthony Black at number 8 to the Washington Wizards here. Once again, I think when you look at someone like Bradley Beal, Kyle Kuzma, what's really missing here is defense. What's also missing, really, in my opinion, is culture, intensity, leadership. Anthony Black brings everything there, right? I don't see a way that this guy can fail. He is one of the smartest players in the draft. He's one of the best two-way players in the draft. He has incredible basketball IQ, incredible feel, incredible touch. I think he's just a really good player. His shot, yes, it's a work in progress. We get it. But you could definitely argue your way into Jalen Hood-Schifino, probably more of what you were probably expecting with, or they go crazy and then they just take Keontae George there and then just double down on their Johnny Davis pick last year. But I don't know about that. Let's go with number 9, the Utah Jazz. It kind of sucks for the Raptors that the Utah Jazz with trader Danny Ainge and, you have the OKC Thunder, two teams, two of the best general managers in the league, and they're both picking ahead of you. And that sucks because in terms of philosophy, you can argue the Raptors maybe target something a little bit different than those teams to some extent, but not really. Like a lot of guys that I think the OKC Thunder are into are also Raptor Z. There's certain teams that have a sort of general philosophy that matches. It's like a blueprint on the type of guys that they like. San Antonio, Miami, Toronto, OKC, Utah, Denver, to me, are like, it's like this is a group of teams that tend to think in a certain way. So the chances are here that if the Raptors are really high on somebody, the two teams ahead of them that are most likely to take them, I think you could also throw Orlando in there just because of the Jeff Weltman, experience and everything that he overlaps. Like I think the Raptors were probably high on Jonathan Isaac, Mo Bamba. Like these are guys that the Raptors could definitely have looked at some point. Now we can have completely different interpretations of the type of people they're looking to bring in, but the type of players they're looking to bring in, the type of attributes they look for in those players, I certainly see it. This is a big reason why I thought that Scotty Barnes was going to go to the OKC Thunder at number 6 in the 2021 draft. If he didn't go to Toronto, I thought that it would be Orlando or OKC. And so in that case, the Raptors were drafting ahead of the two teams that thought like them. But in this case, they are drafting behind 3 teams, really, twice. It's kind of a shitty situation, if I'm being honest. The Orlando Magic picked twice. The OKC Thunder picked once. It's crazy. But let's just hope that these teams fall in love with somebody else. So who do I think that the the Jazz will pick here? There's a part of me that thinks that the Jazz will go with Taylor Hendricks. What do you guys think? I could also see them going for Jalen Hood-Schifino. It depends on where they're at right now. Like to me, it's like Lauri Markkanen, Taylor Horton Tucker was good for them last year. They obviously found something in Walker Kessler. They have a ton of cap space, or they're gonna have a ton of cap space. They have a lot of picks coming up too. So in terms of their roster, like there's a lot of opens, right? But I think Taylor Hendricks is the guy that goes here. I think he kind of fits. Just as a backup behind Lauri Markkanen, I think they can sort of bring him along slowly. I think Lauri can slide over to the 3. He's proven that. So, you could have them playing together as well. There is, of course, it's a Utah is Utah, and they've always had this thing. There's always been a lot of white players in Utah. Let's just be honest. Like, let's not mince, anything about it, right? Matt Harpring. There's just always been a lot of white players in Utah. There's just always been the way it's been. So is this a place for Grady Dick as well? Honestly, if I were them, obviously the pick here is Casey Wallace. And since I am them right now, oh man, I desperately want to pick Casey Wallace here for them. I don't know how they let him go. Like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. Casey Wallace. Yep, we're going Casey here. So Casey goes number 9 to the Utah Jazz. Now, number 10, I think this is going to be Derek Lively territory. Um, One of the best shot blockers in college basketball history here. I think he shores up a lot of issues for the Dallas Mavericks, who had all sorts of defensive issues. If they're bringing back Kyrie Irving, I think this could be just the perfect fit of what they've been looking for as a rim running big. I don't know if he'll be able to play 30 minutes a night free next year, but there is some precedence, obviously, with the success that Walker Kessler had. Shot blocking is something that can translate from the NCAA to the NBA for sure. And he's a decent athlete. Like he's can't do much around other than around the basket, but Luka's a great passer. Kyrie's a great passer. He's a great finisher. I think you could definitely talk yourself into this. So we're gonna go Derek Lively here. If they don't bring back Kyrie, I think that might change things here. But now with the 11th pick, they went Azur Thompson with the 6th pick. Who are they going with the 11th pick? I think with the 11th pick, they go Grady Dick. What do you guys think? Taylor Hendricks or Grady Dick? I think they're gonna go Grady Dick. So with the 11th pick, the Orlando Magic select Grady Dick. Great movement shooter, a little bit shaky defensively, but I think it's workable. He competes hard, really smart player off the ball. He moves without the basketball. There isn't really like his form and fundamentals, honestly, between him and between him and Jordan Hawkins. I think these are two of the better movement shooters I've seen come through the draft in like 5 years. So I really like him. Um, Obviously not for the Raptors. I'm not really like big on drafting guys who don't project as great defenders, but I don't think he's a terrible defender either. I just think that he's going to be someone that you're going to have to work with. Um, all right. You go number 12. Now, the rich get richer here. There's a lot of really good players on the board here. And there has been some talk about, this could be where Bilal Coulibaly has a promise. I'm not really sure that's the case. I think this is going to be something like I have never been able to accurately predict what the OKC Thunder are going to do. I did not think they were going to pick. I definitely thought they were going to pick Jonathan Kuminga over Josh Giddey. And last year, I did not see them picking Jalen Williams. I definitely saw them picking Chet Holmgren, but usually in this part of the draft, I have no idea what they're doing. And that means they're probably going to go and surprise me. And Bilal Coulibaly would surprise me. But I'm going to try and guess that they're going to go with Taylor Hendricks here. So we're going to go Taylor Hendricks at number 12 for them. Now, the moment that you've all been waiting for, we got a lot of options here if you're the Toronto Raptors, right? Briefly about the Raptors roster, obviously you have some question marks, right? Is Fred VanVleet coming back? Is Gary Trent Jr. coming back? What's Jakob Poeltl coming back for? Do you have, what position is Scotty Barnes playing next year? Are you trading OG Anunoby? This roster could look so different. Which of your young players are going to pop? Which of your young players are going to disappoint? I think that these are valid questions, very valid questions to be asking, right? But the Raptors have always shown a propensity to go talent and upside over everything, right? Sometimes it works out. Like Pascal Siakam became your starting power forward pretty much as a rookie. I mean, granted, it was token starters, but like it was a position of need. OG Anunoby was a position of need, but it was obviously the best player left on the board. Highest upside. So I'm looking at highest upside here. And honestly, like I'm picking between really there's four guys that you could look at here if you're the Toronto Raptors, right? Number one, Jalen Hood-Schifino, right? A guy that I'm really warming up to. Positional size is so big, guys. Like what you're watching with Jamal Murray, what you're watching with just across the board, right? Like look how big the Nuggets are. And granted, it didn't work out for them tonight, but I think it's just one of those things that teams are preferring to have taller backcourt creators. You saw this with Cade Cunningham. You saw this across the board. Like this is just a trend that's coming in the NBA. 6'5", great feel for the basketball. Like just a great playmaker. Questionable shooting, fine, but decent enough. Like I like the mechanics there. Kobe Buffkin, another big point guard, right? 6'4", long arms, great finisher. But like what have we seen? Freshman season was a little bit shaky. Second year was better. But that elite part of the second season, the reason that he's being mocked as high as 12, 11, 9, 13, and not 25, 27, is really about a 6-week stretch, 6 or 7 weeks where they had an injury and he took over, right? They had an injury to Jet Howard and he got the reins to the offense and he was great, right? You could look at Nick Smith. I think you could look at Nick Smith if you're the Raptors and just say, okay, do we buy the pedigree, right? Do we buy the pedigree like coming into the college season, there was a very good case to be made that Nick Smith was the most highly touted freshman in the country, right? You could make a case that if he was going third overall, no one would have batted an eye. If I had told you last year at this time, Nick Smith Jr. is going to be the third pick in the NBA draft in 2023, no one would have batted an eye. They'd be like, yep, tall point guard. It's the same thing, right? He just wasn't very efficient. He wasn't healthy. You haven't seen it, and you're batting on upside here, and it could work out. It definitely could work out. Something very similar could be said about Keontae George. Difference between Keontae and Nick Smith was Keontae was just a much better player than Nick Smith, but he's not a point guard. His playmaking, his basketball IQ, his feel for the game, his upside just as a creator is just not great. Shot looks smooth, just didn't go in very much. So you could make a case that, what's his role really? I mean, when this type of player hits, like when a Keontae George type hits in the NBA, it's usually like a great type of player, like a Tyler Hero, right? Like it's a guy who usually ends up with a max contract or like a Jordan Poole, someone like that. But when it doesn't work, the guy's out of the league within 3 years. So I'm not really sure I'm on board with Keontae. We go further down and you start looking at names like Rayon Rupert, right? Who could be in the mix here. Really fits what the Raptors do. Long defender, just really decent. Jordan Hawkins, just from a fit perspective on what the Raptors didn't have. The first draft video I did was on Jordan Hawkins. I think he fits seamlessly with what the Raptors want to do. If they're losing Gary Trent Jr., I think you pretty much replace so much of what you're losing with him. The only thing with Jordan I would say is he measured a little bit smaller than I was hoping for, and I think that might hurt his stock here. And it probably does change. Maybe it changes what his defensive upside is, especially if you're thinking about him guarding 3 positions. Now, he wasn't a great defender in college, but he wasn't a bad defender either. Shown a lot of hip mobility. I think he showed a lot of tenacity and willingness to defend. I certainly think he's someone who'll be able to guard some ones, maybe some twos. But in terms of projecting him like a great defender at the NBA level, I don't think he'll be a great defender at the NBA level in the mold of like a Anthony Black or a Cason Wallace. So you have a lot of players here who are just kind of there's question marks, right? There's question marks across the board. And I think in this situation with no obvious answers, I think I'm going to go with what my heart says the Raptors will do, which is Bilal Coulibaly. Now, I haven't talked about Bilal largely because I wanted this to be a surprise, but I think that he's the right pick here. Long arms, the way he moves, just I can't say enough about the way he moves, man. Um, it's just he has a chance. Like there are no players on the there's like one player on the board right now to me that has a chance to be like a top 10 player in the NBA, and that's this guy. Like every other guy has like maybe a fringe chance to be an all-star, maybe, a fringe chance to be like a really good starter, but this guy actually has a chance to be a star. And I think that that's rare to find at a 13th overall pick. And, if you believe in the mental makeup, if you believe in his work ethic, if you believe in his trajectory, his youth, his upside, his health, his shot, which is a thing of debate, like for a lot of people. Um, James Welsh saying Bilal average 5.5 points, no offense. Yeah, I get it. I fully get it. And a lot of people are going to be like, oh my God, 2 years away from being 2 years away. It's Bruno Caboclo all over again. And I fully understand that. And if you tell me on draft night that he ends up falling all the way to 22, I'd be surprised. I don't know who's going to pass up on him after 16 because I think that this guy has something. He has something to him, man. The way that he moves with the basketball in his hands, the way that he weaves in and out of traffic, the way that he can, sort of like gap and get into spaces and contort his body, like it's an interest. Such an interesting athlete. And if you can measure out, just his mental makeup, like the love for the game, the desire to get better, the personality stuff, if you can get there with him, you might be catching a guy who's just a little bit newer to basketball, and the Raptors are not strangers to that, right? This is a team that has shown a track record for doing this over and over, and I'm surprised every time people are surprised by this, whether it be Pascal Siakam or Christian Koloko. Like these are guys that were newer to basketball. Um, it's really difficult when you draft somebody, right? Nick laughs saying he has that Shea Gilgeous-Alexander herky jerky. He does, and like there are again like different ways to look at athleticism. Like you can look at athleticism in the strictest way of like a Cam Whitmore type, right? Where you can just say how quickly do you get up, what's your second jump, how fast do you run, etc. But there is like a fluidity to athleticism that can become a serious weapon for a player if they can hit on the skill stuff. And he has the package, like the athletic package, like from being 6'7" with a 7'2" wingspan. He has like this fluidity that is just lacking from, other guys in this range, right? When you watch like someone like a Jet Howard move around the court or a Bryce Sensabaugh, like uh, they're not like this. They don't move like this, right? So I just think that the way a guy moves, I hate to say it over and over again. And if you don't really understand where I'm coming from with this, you're probably going to think that I'm overrating this part. But I think the way a guy moves has a lot. It projects very differently, like for different guys. But if you saw Kobe Bryant when he was 17 years old, and I'm not saying Bilal Coulibaly is Kobe Bryant, but please understand me. When you saw Kobe Bryant move on the basketball court at Lower Merion when he was 17 years old, and you didn't walk away thinking this guy was going to be an NBA player, like you're crazy. Like you don't get it, right? There's a way that certain guys move that is just effortless. It's effortless. It may not always be fast, but it's fluid. He's got like a fluid movement to him, and this shows up on defense as well. Some of the stuff that I've seen Bilal Coulibaly do on defense is just it's monstrous, you know. So he's a powerful athlete, man. So I like this pick for them. I understand that for a lot of people are gonna be like, "Oh my god, like, it's not Bruno Caboclo though, guys. Don't get it twisted. This is not Bruno Caboclo. They have a lot more intel on this guy. He has a lot more experience with competitive basketball. He's played at a much higher level than Bruno. You just have a larger sample size with him, right? So I'm gonna go with him there. Now, his feet. Like try to like hone in on his feet here. It's crazy. Like that's insane. Like I don't understand who's supposed to score over this guy. The combination of quickness, length, agility, tenacity, right? Like he is he's got some insane skills. Who does he remind me of? You know who he kind of reminds me of? And this is not going to be a very favorable comparison because he did not end up being a lot. He reminds me of like a very defensively oriented Rodney Carney. And that's going to be like and I was really high on Rodney Carney, so I could be really wrong here too. Um, because I have a thing for fluid athletes, man. I just like guys who move this way, and you just see like the way that he's moving. And again, Rodney Carney did not have the Toronto Raptors, so yep. Like this is what I'm talking about. Like this level of agility, and you look at those long strides, and one of the things I'll tell you is long strides and straight line drivers always tend to do better on bigger courts. You saw it with Giannis, you saw it with Scotty Barnes. I'll tell you, you give this guy a little bit more space, his explosiveness and his long strides, if his ball handling comes up even like 10%, he's gonna get past guys like it's nothing. And he has all the tools to actually finish. Which is ironic because it's just literally like boom, finishing. And again, you talk about, guys who are, let's just say, like good fits with Scotty. I like a lot of these guys as fits with Scotty. I like Jordan, I like Kobe, and I like ironically Jordan, Kobe, ha ha ha. But yes. Um and so here lies, the improvement areas or the weaknesses, right? So we need to work on his shooting form. There's a bit of a dip, right? The shot is kind of like there's like a rigidness to it. It's not very fluid. He looks like someone who learned how to shoot very recently, in all honesty. He really does. Like take it from someone who played basketball. Like this is not a I've been taking jump shots my whole life type of shooting form. Um I think you look at this primarily as a really good defender who can come in and be a half decent cutter off the ball, right? Someone who can, he's not going to provide a ton of spacing. Fine. But you have playmakers like Scotty and Jakob and potentially Pascal Siakam who can find this guy for dives to the rim all the time, right? Um, how Summerlow saying how tall is he? Uh, he's about 6'7". I think he could still be growing though. I think he might make it up to 6'8". Um, his handle isn't great to be honest, man. But honestly, I think there's there's just so much room for expansion in his game right now, right? Like you don't know what he can do or can't do because he has had like a very limited role, right? In Europe. Um, you don't know what his playmaking skills are like. But you understand his basketball IQ and instincts are fairly decent based on his off-ball movement, right? You don't know how different that shot form can look, but you've had some success, I think, some success in working with guys who had sort of a funky release and making it better, right? It hasn't always been perfect, and sure, like you can make a case that you draft a guy like Grady Dick or Jordan Hawkins, and you're gonna get a real shooter, but there aren't a lot of real shooters in this draft, like real pure shooters. There's a lot of guys with shaky jump shots. I think you just have to pick one that you think is going to develop, that's going to put in the reps to develop, who has tools to land in an NBA rotation, even if that jump shot doesn't completely pan out. Because I think at worst case, this guy is Matisse Thybulle with a little bit more offense. Like I think his defense is special. Like at least his defensive tools are special. Like he's doing stuff on the basketball court, man, defensively. That's just like, holy shit, could this guy guard 1 through 4? Like he can legitimately guard 1 through 4. That's a really big claim. That's not something you can say about a lot of people. Um, he reminds me of some very special defenders. Just again, in how his on-ball defense and off-ball defense has like his upside defensively is about as high as anyone in this draft. Like Cason Wallace, Anthony Black, Bilal Coulibaly. Those to me, and of course Victor Wembanyama. Like those 4 guys are all guys that you could really legitimately say could be all league defenders at some point. There aren't a lot of guys in this draft that you can say that about. There's a lot of guys who are going to be competent defenders. There's going to be some guys who are going to be definitely weak defenders. There's some guys who are going to be weak-ish, and then they're going to get weaker as they get older, whatever. But man, I see. Yeah, I mean, look, you guys have followed me long enough. You know, I like two-way players. I'm not a fan of one-way players. I don't like all defense, no offense. I don't like all offense, no defense. Um, there are so many shooters in this draft. In the top 15, 16, there's a lot of guys with shooting question marks. Like, I understand that you probably think Keontae George is a shooter. Um, I think he's someone who has a great jump shot, who hasn't shown an ability to put it in on a high level. There aren't a lot of great shooters in this draft, though. Like, we have a very different understanding of what a great shooter is. Jordan Hawkins to me is a great shooter. Grady Dick's a great shooter. Find me 2 guys who are on that level that are expected to go top 20, because it doesn't always translate. It's not going to translate always, right? Um, Giovanni saying James Welsh Raptors trade into the top 10 and get a guard. They will take Bilal Coulibaly at 13. Yeah, that would be interesting. Like my dream draft for the Raptors would be somehow getting a top 10 pick for Kaysen, right? So you get your shooting, right? You get a little bit more shooting, and then keeping 13 and taking Bilal. Like Kaysen and Bilal would basically, like with Scotty and OG, would be like, I would be so excited for this team going forward. I completely understand and empathize with everyone who says they want a second pick, because I think we all could say like, yeah, I want this guy, but I also want this guy, I also think Scoot is a really competent defender. Um, I think he's someone who will project well as a half decent defender at the NBA level. So, if the Raptors end up taking Scoot Henderson and Bilal Coulibaly, that would be great. I'm very excited to see what yeah, I think with all the people who are going back because of the NIL stuff, I think he will be. I think he will be taken in the second round for sure. Because of the dreaded P word potential. Yo, I don't say I'm not saying he's like a bad shooter. I'm just saying he's not a great shooter. Like, you can't say someone who shot that poorly is a great shooter. And he has a great form, you know. But you could argue certain guys have a good form, they just haven't shot really well, you know. It's possible to have a really good, promising form and shoot 29% from three. Are you a great shooter because you shot 29% from three? And there are actually guys like that in this draft where their shot looks great, but they just haven't hit it at a high enough level. That could be a lot of things. That could be spacing, that could be roll, that could be the types of threes that they're taking. Just I don't know. You have to divide it up. Like, you could take a guy like, who's really, really great at pull up threes and above the break threes. And you could say, well, the guy was mainly used in catch and shoot situations. That's not his bread and butter. That's not where he's great. you know Take a guy like a Jordan Hawkins, who has a very unique skill set in terms of like movement shooting, or a guy like Grady Dick. They both have, if you put them in a position where they have to generate all of their 3-pointers by themselves off the dribble, right? Maybe they shot poorly. Well, you know, I don't know if you can necessarily say they're a great shooter if they didn't have a half decent percentage, right? You can say they have shooting potential. I think that's about as far as I'm willing to go on that. Yeah, I think hitchless, smooth stroke. I think that's why Keontae George is projected by most people to be in the lottery. I think defensive IQ, athleticism, paint finishing, separation, basketball IQ, um, positional versatility, long-term upside. I think that's why he's not a top 10 pick. The goaltending, Bam Adebayo and Jamal Murray, that was a clear goaltend. And I mean, when you look at what this game came down to, which is a one possession game, the number of possessions that were robbed from the Denver Nuggets. Now, I fully understand from the league's perspective, more games, more revenue. I get it. You don't want this to be a sweep. You want this to be, a fairly competitive series. There's no market legacy favorite, whatever. But I heard this comment of like, oh, Nikola Jokic is definitely a top 10 center in the NBA. No shit. Like, was a top 10 center all time. No shit. Of course he is. Of course he's the top 10 center of all time. This is insulting to even say that he's a top 10 center. And I understand center has been like the most loaded position. But to say that as if it's like some sort of revolutionary, thing, I think he should be he should very firmly be in the conversation for top 20 players of all time right now. Fuck top 10 centers. He should be in the conversation for top. I would love, I was thinking of show ideas. Here's a great show idea, which I don't think I have seen it done in other channels. Top 2-man duos that never happened. Here's one that I think would be the greatest 2-man duo of all time. I'll give you two. And this is going to be my exit, because I'm just talking and rambling at this point, and it's 1:20 and I'm tired. My top two 2-man duos that never happened. Number 1, Michael Jordan and Shaquille O'Neal. And number 2, Nikola Jokic and Steph Curry. Have a good night, man. All right. Peace, guys.